Major funding for these programs is provided by the CUNY TV Foundation, Capital One Bank, Geneva Burns, Gian Tomasi and Webster, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Perfect Building Maintenance, the Wickoff Group, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding is provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, Colliers International New York City, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG Partners, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Eastern Union Funding, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Hersha Hospitality Trust, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides Centurion Holdings, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Matone Group, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, New Banks, People's United Bank, Popular Community Bank, RBS Citizens Bank, SJB Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, and These Friends.
New York City development is on fire. There, you walk around, there are cranes, there's construction. Parking lots are no longer parking lots, there are development sites. There's development in every one of the 5 boroughs, even in Staten Island. And today, through the help of some good friends, I've put together a group of dynamic young guys, with the exception of one older guy up here, but some young guys who really are involved with massive development, and needless to say, and the banker to many of these people today to provide their insight on residential development in New York City. My guests today include Peter Dorsey, who is the president for the New York City region for M&T Bank, Sam Sidhu, who is the managing principal at Megalith Capital, Andrew Joblin, who is the senior vice president at Fisher Brothers, and last but not least, even though I joke with him that he is the older man there, so he makes me feel young, my friend Joe McMillan, who's the chairman and CEO of DDG. So you are lending money to all of these type of people. Are you comfortable? He's 30 years of age. He's 30 years of age. He's close to 30 years of age, okay? But
well, I just met Sam, so maybe we'll be lending him money in the future.
But the point is, you know, M&T has always been there. In 2008, you've been over there on the situation. Aren't you getting? Are you getting a? You know, are you getting a little worried that there's a little too much development in New York City?
The condo side worries us a little bit more than the rental side, because the prices of land have gone up so sharply over the past year and a half, really in the last 6 months especially, that nobody can buy land to build a rental. So we see a very bright future, even though rents are very high. There's been a little bit more product added recently, but over the long term, it doesn't look like there's going to be enough product to match the demand. So we feel comfortable on the rental side. Yes. The condo side, we've been very active, but as you
with
pointed
good
out,
borrowers, like
very,
you've done 4 major developments with Joe over the last 2 years.
And I'll let Joe talk about those projects, but what attracted us to DDG does a wonderful job, first of all, but we didn't know that, and we didn't deal with them until 2009 or 10 and the start of the crisis. So we were able to, I think, drive good protective structures for the bank and provide capital, albeit on conservative terms, in really down years. That worked for us and it worked for them, and those projects have done well. So we're comfortable if the deals are structured properly.
I think it relates, Peter, to if it's a well-positioned deal with the right sponsor who has a lot of equity in the deal and at the right price. There are certain neighborhoods, like what Joe has done on Bond Street, what he's in the meatpacking district, and the Tootsie Roll, in these other areas, because he wasn't building huge projects. He was building projects where there are a number of people, there are a lot of wealthy people from here and around the world who come around and want to buy properties, right?
That's correct. We've intentionally kept our unit count below 50 in every project we've done. We've got about $750 million in development underway right now across the portfolio, primarily condo, some with retail. And we've done 4 deals with Peter, in the process of closing the 4th deal in the last 24 months. But from a capital allocation perspective, we purposely kept our projects of a certain size so that from risk mitigation, et cetera, portfolio, if we needed to sell out the units, we don't have 200 units to move in one
But of all
project.
your deals, all of the development deals that you're talking about have been condominium development deals.
Correct.
Now, Fisher Brothers, most of them are residential rentals, but there's a condo. So talk to me about some of the developments that you're working on.
Yeah, the land we're able to buy right and cheap enough to do rental, we prefer to do that. It's the family's long-term vision to have very tax-efficient long-term ownership. But when we saw the St. John site down in Tribeca, we fell in love with the view corridor and the opportunity to do something really architecturally significant there. Obviously, the land.
That's 101 Murray.
Correct. And obviously,
And what are you going to be building there?
we're going to do probably about 150 condos. There's no height limit there. It'll be a star architect designing it. It'll be something very special.
When you say there's no height limit, how high do you think it will go?
It's going to go about probably 600 feet. So it'll be some great views up top.
And how large will these units be?
I think the average unit size is going to be probably 1,800 square feet. As you get higher up, the units will become larger.
Talk to me about some of the rental developments you're planning.
Sure. We purchased a site at 22 Thames, which is on the corner of Greenwich and Thames, overlooking the trade centers. Obviously, with a lot of things happening down there and a huge office park being built, we're very bullish on some of the companies that are moving down there. Condé Nast, for instance. We think it's going to become a 24-hour neighborhood, and this site, overlooks all that action, and we're excited. We're gonna that's going to be a very tall building as well. The site isn't the largest footprint, but we have Raphael Vignoli designing it. He's an excellent architect. Did 432 Park, so we're very excited about that project.
And then the other?
We have one in Midtown East, which is a site we've owned for 60 years. It's a great residential site. There's a ton of demand up there, so we're going to be developing that. We're in design development now. We'll probably start demo in the winter and start going vertical 6 or 8 months later.
So how about the kid from Pennsylvania? I mean, you went to Wharton, you went to Harvard over there. How do you come to New York and started to be a developer?
I entered the market fairly recently. Launched Megalith Capital about 3-4 years ago with a focus initially on multifamily residential. So we built a small but sizable portfolio over the past 3 years, spanning from Los Angeles to Texas to here in Park Slope in Brooklyn. In New York, in the last 12 months, we consider ourselves to be opportunistic investors. And we've seen a lot of interesting opportunities when you can buy the land at a right price in the right location. You can make a decent amount of money, and that's the challenges that we're facing right now, is trying to find that land. But we feel very fortunate to have a couple projects underway right now, which we've put into contract or acquired in the last 12 to 18 months.
So tell me about the projects, because as opposed to Joe, which we have to get him a passport to go into Brooklyn one day, okay? Because he knows of it.
That's not true.
Okay, but he hasn't really found one yet. Yeah. And Fisher Brothers, they know of it, but they really don't go to Brooklyn either, okay? Andrew may have gone to Williamsburg, but not otherwise over there. But you're in Dumbo.
We're in Dumbo. In Dumbo, we acquired a site in March of this year from the Watchtower Society. It's an existing warehouse, which we're going to convert to condo by adding some additional penthouse units on top, as well as some land, which we're going to do an 80/20 rental project on a 12-story tower.
What do you think you can get for units in the Dumbo area, both in the rental market and also in the for sale unit?
Dumbo's a very interesting market. It's, in my opinion, I consider it sort of the Tribeca of Brooklyn. You have the cobblestone streets, you have some of the townhouses, you have young families, as well as some of the flash and the edge that sort of Williamsburg might have, where you have a lot of young, hip tech folks wanting to live and work there. On the rental side, we are seeing rents approaching 70 and north of $70 a square foot. And on the condo side, as proven by many projects, which are just beginning but in contract, north of $1,500 a square foot. So we underwrote the deal at $1,100. It's going to do really well at $1,100. I think we'll blow past that.
Now you're coming in to compete with my friend Mr. McMillan in Tribeca, right? You're doing something in Tribeca?
We are. Again, we have sort of an infill location in the northeast corner of Tribeca. We underwrote the deal last year. We went into contract last October. We're not searching for or chasing the prime Tribeca $2,500, $3,000 square foot sellouts, but because we got our land at an attractive base, it's actually right adjacent to one of Andrew's projects. We feel that we bought right, and the project will do well at a mid-$1,000 sellout, but I think we're going to do north of $2,000.
Here's my question. There are limited amount of land that we have, especially in Manhattan. With the limited amount of land, with the numerous people trying to enter the market, how hard is it to be a developer today?
I think the most challenging part of the market right now is on the acquisition side, finding reasonably priced land. But I will say, though, that if you look at New York City, citywide, neighborhoods constantly reinvent themselves. There's a constant evolution. If you look at the Meatpacking District, 10 years ago, nobody was there. It was not a nightlife destination. It was not a residential. You mentioned Bushwick, some other neighborhoods. Neighborhoods constantly change. So whereas opportunities may diminish in one particular neighborhood, they could open up in another. So I think there is land available. But land prices right now at $400, $500, $600, $700. We've seen opportunities presented us at $1,000 a foot. Oftentimes they just don't make sense. But you have to wait and pick your opportunities. And when you find something that does make sense in a neighborhood and a location you like, you got to jump on it and you have to move fast.
That's an important thing, and it relates. You have to, you find the site, you have to move fast, but there's two components. One of them is to have the banker who's going to finance it, but the only way that the banker is going to finance it, he's going to have equity. You're going to, you need equity and you need sponsorship. So how do you
Here's
make
what's
that?
going on with the banking sort of perspective on this. I don't speak for everybody, but I think this is fairly, broadly speaking, true. Prior to the run-up in land prices, the luxury condominium sector, banks were able to finance at reasonable percentages with a good amount of equity, call it 60% financing, maybe a little bit more, even less in some cases. And that was enough to get the developer where they had to go and keep bank break-even levels on nice condominium product at something like $1,200 a foot, $700 to $1,200 on the really high end. What's happened with the run-up is these projects need higher break-evens than that to get done. And this is where I think the question is definitely out. Banks have not been willing to take their senior debt up to $1,500, $1,600 a foot. And what's happening there is you're seeing the alternative capital providers, these large non-bank shadow banking system providing.
You mean the mortgage REITs?
The REITs, yeah, most primarily them.
I mean the Starwood Capitals
and opportunity
are out
funds
there,
and
the Apollo Commercial Real Estate Finance,
And there's enough juice, though, in those deals that it works. But the question is what we think about if interest rates were to be in a different environment 2, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, what is the impact on those projects and how much sensitivity?
I think it's a very valid point because those people are not paying bank rates, so they're paying 7 over LIBOR,
Yeah, 8, 9%,
8, 9 over
blended.
LIBOR, blended. So what happens is fine when LIBOR is 0.25%.
Exactly.
You can live there. If LIBOR goes up, and look what we've seen over the past month with the 10-year Treasury being as low as 260, then going as high as 3. Now it's down to 261 again. This is a a very volatile situation.
Probably for a couple of years they'll be low, but if there's so much liquidity in that alternative space for capital that if you're a developer and you have a decent reputation and you have a well-conceived project, you're going to get a loan. You're going to maybe even get 75, 80, even higher loan to cost, because for these REITs we're talking about, if they've raised capital, their return parameters for investors are so high that if they're not using it, they're in trouble. So they have to put it to work, and they're putting it to work with these break-evens. But if rates were 400 or 500 basis points more, it's a little, and absorption weren't as strong, and there was more very high-end product. That's kind of where we get a little bit concerned in the future.
We've tended to be somewhat conservative in the way we capitalize our projects, with significant equity, traditional bank financing, whether it's 35 to 45, 50% equity into our projects. We have not to date closed any loans where we're taking expensive capital to go way up the cap stack.
And you've been raising equity also.
Yes. We have the benefit of having closed-end funds for sort of our core GP capital, but we are always in the market raising capital, and we have sought some of the alternative financing, but we also tend to favor traditional banks.
When we talk about neighborhoods and alternative uses, which you eloquently put that there are different neighborhoods, I mean, we have the Hudson Yards, okay? That's one question, but so that's the related project. But you have other areas. Sherwood just sold their property to the guy from
the Dodgers,
the Dodgers over there, where the person who's really an out-of-towner is going to be building a development. There are other sites in the far west side, going to different neighborhoods. I know Taconic is doing a deal on 54th Street and 11th Avenue on a property. Now, somebody would say, who's going to 54th and 11th? There are no distances in Midtown, okay? Because, you can bus, you can train, it's transit-oriented. Have you, because there had been a resurgence, have you looked in Harlem? Or would you look in the Inwood neighborhood, because there's a lot of development taking place there? Have you thought of that?
Inwood is not a neighborhood we've looked in. We have looked in Harlem selectively, around major transportation hubs. But and we've looked in Brooklyn, contrary to what you said earlier. We do know Brooklyn. We have done projects in Brooklyn before, although not in the last 2 to 3 years.
And I know you're active in New Jersey also. What about the Jersey City, which has had a lot of residential rental, more rental than condominium product over there? Hoboken, there's limited space, so there's not that much. The Edgewater, those sections, has Fisher Brothers, have you looked at that section of the country?
It's interesting. We've started to study that section, because especially northern New Jersey along the waterfront. As someone who's young and potentially in the next few years thinking about settling down, having a family.
Come on, you're going to live in Manhattan. Stop this crap to me.
It's
you're going to be in the suburbs. It's like having in McMillan in the suburbs.
No, you're going to start thinking about how
for Darcy.
how expensive it is to have a family and live in Manhattan and have the space. As land prices are going up, multifamily is extremely expensive, and I don't know there are many sites left that multifamily pencils. So I think the benefit of that's going to be the outer boroughs in northern New Jersey, where you can get more space.
It's interesting. My good friend Alan Goldman of SJP Residential, the Hemsley site was vacant before most of you were born. Okay, it was 40 years, 45 years, that the site over there. Now you have SJP is building their first of their 2 32-story towers, and then Tucker Development and SK Development, the other side of the Kushner family, is building another situation. But they're building rentals. Yeah. And we're also talking about a substantial difference in rent. We're talking that they're penciling something at maybe a $38 to $40 a square foot.
Yeah. Construction
costs are similar, but land cost is less. And it's easier sometimes to build over there. And as you just said, it's more convenient than the suburban for the family over there.
And they have pilot programs over New Jersey that make taxes more efficient. As 421A has expired, and now 80/20 is the only way you can get tax breaks. New Jersey is a little more tax friendly on the residential rental side.
You know, the interesting thing on the 421As is that, you know, if you go back 10 years ago, because of the 10-year 421A in the city, you know, people were selling, you know, every person who bought an apartment remembers that, oh, I'm paying $28 a month for real estate taxes. Now they go into the 7th year, oh, I'm paying, $1,500 a month for real estate taxes because the burn off over there. How important do you believe is the 421As as a developer today?
I think it's very important. I think in the short term, it's not, but in the long term, I think it will impact real estate values and development in the city. There was such a constrained supply over the course of the last 3 years, and there was so much pent-up demand for whether it was rentals or whether it was for condos that you know, buyers and/or renters were willing to pay. But over time, as you know, that's no longer the case. There's more development in the pipeline. I think there's going to need to be some new program, whether it's 421A comes back or whether it's something new under a different name, in order to continue what we've seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years in the city with the business-friendly environment, the development, and the overall increase in quality of life. I think we're going to need something.
We have in New York today a number of, there are about 161 projects, new hotel projects in various stages. But what we also have is we have 3 or 4 major 5-star hotels which have not been built in New York City probably in 50 years. I mean, because there hasn't been a 5-star hotel built. Sean Hennessy of Lodging Economics, a good friend, said to me that he doesn't believe that the hotel elements are going to be strong enough, that they're being pushed by the residential elements. What do you think of like these concepts of the Baccarat, which is on 53rd, which is a hotel, luxury, the Four Seasons, which is, you know, down in Tribeca that they call it over there. And then the third one would be Extel's 157. 157, there's no question that the apartments have sold and they've done well. And the hotel is a separate component, but it's not that important. Do you believe that the hotel components help the residential components?
I think that hotel-like services help residential components, and all of our projects we have modeled after kind of a boutique hotel. If you look at a number of the boutique hotels, around the country or here in New York City, where you can get 24-hour concierge, you can get things delivered to your apartment, you have a nice fitness center, you have amenities and services. We think that that's important, and it has driven value to the residents of our buildings.
So what you're saying, which is very important, and it's a question of what Fisher Brothers and Sam's doing, are you putting in these buildings that type of amenity package? I mean, somebody, Dean was talking to me about, they were putting a pool. I said, for a rental building in Greenpoint, I don't think it's that important for you to have a pool, but I believe what you just said is very important. People want the health club. They want to have the availability that they can go to the health club. They want the 24-hour concierge.
Correct.
That they can have that. They used to want, and many places still want, the fresh direct freezer, so they could have the food delivered and it's available on that. Amenities important?
Incredibly important. Some are check the box, where the future renter or the future condo owner just wants to know they have it. For example, in the building I live in, I think that the gym is probably the most underutilized gym, but yet one of the most beautiful gyms I've seen in a residential building. Having said that, it is critical, especially of buildings with scale, to have that sort of boutique, hotel-like feel. It's incredibly important.
We've financed a number of rental buildings, even though there haven't been many, and if you don't have a super prime location, you better have a cutting-edge amenity package, and to draw people, depending if the subways aren't near them or whatever the intangibles that's lacking, that tends to be, if it is a building of scale where you have you have to have it today, and if you don't have it, you're not getting the type of rents that are being gotten by the better buildings.
Yeah, I think that Spruce Street was an interesting example of that. There's a location that you wouldn't think many people would be attracted to, but the amenity package and the design they put there, they've been able to achieve $100 rents, which no one thought was feasible. So we spend a tremendous amount of time studying different buildings, which amenities get used, which don't, trying to pioneer some new things that haven't been thought of. So we spend a tremendous amount of time and think it's...
relating to that, one of the biggest things in the hospitality business is the proliferation of rooftop bars, okay? Do you believe that in certain of the buildings that you have, I mean, if you don't use it for a penthouse to be sold as a penthouse, the availability of having the meeting space as a meeting area with a bar type of thing?
We have done amenitized rooftops in our projects. Bar, no.
It's illegal zoning-wise to do a bar above residential.
Yeah, I don't
Right,
think
but
we can either, but
you've done amenitized.
you've done amenitized, but you try to make it. Part of what you're providing is a lifestyle, and by providing the right amenities, whether it's the fitness center or whether it's a rooftop, there's a sense of well-being and lifestyle that a resident gets when they're in one of your projects, and that's critical.
Now, another thing which I recently wrote about was the storage space. The need and the ludicrous price, like at 56
Leonard, yeah.
as an example. And I've seen storage space in properties in Park Slope where people have taken the basements basically and storage because there's limited. You have a small apartment and you don't have storage space. Have you done that?
Storage space, bicycle rooms, fitness centers, it's all critical.
No, okay, but you're selling the storage
Selling the
space?
storage, yes.
Selling the storage space. How much is storage space selling for?
Depends on the building. We've sold it for as low as, 1,000, 1,500 a foot, and sold it for even higher.
I'm going to write an article about this, is the proliferation of the Zip car and because now you have Zip, you have Hertz, you have Enterprise. All of these cars are becoming, the utilization over there, that's a big item. Do you think that perhaps in a small area you would put a small Zip car type of thing? Or
We are doing that in San Francisco. We have 3 buildings under construction in San Francisco where we have parking, and in one of those there will be a Zip car, for use. Residents come down, they can get the Zip car, they can bring it back. We have not done that yet here in New York.
how long is this going to last, banker? You're the guy giving out the money.
I think on the rental side, it's lasting for the foreseeable future because people want to be here in New York. There's no place to go. There's definitely an affordable, we're talking earlier, there's an affordable housing crisis. There has been for a long time. That's a big challenge for the city because people need to work here. And, we talked about Brooklyn before. The young people, by and large, want to be in Brooklyn. And I think that's the interesting thing that's happening today is that Manhattan, with the advent of the super expensive housing stock that's getting created, is getting less interesting and a little bit more boring. And all of the creative types are going to Brooklyn.
He's moving out to Brooklyn.
He might go to Brooklyn.
Okay. I think we've got a pretty good idea in the residential market and what's happening. And I'm really lucky to have this group of young guys, including, you, even though you're older.
Thank you.
But all joking aside, I'd like to thank Peter Darcy, Sam Sadoo, Andrew Joblin, and Joe McMillan, and I'll see you next week.